This is the Apple Watch Series 10, and as always I have put it to the test wearing it during all of my workouts and pretty much just 24/7. As an athlete, I was really hoping for a new Apple Watch Ultra this year, but unfortunately Apple has just introduced a new color for last year's Ultra 2. However, we got the Series 10 this year as kind of an anniversary edition of the regular Apple Watch, and this one also comes with a few exciting new features. In this video we will discuss all the pros and cons of the watch, compare it with last year's Series 9 and also with the Ultra 2, so that you can see if this watch is the right choice for you. As in all my reviews, I will focus primarily on the sports, fitness and health features, showing you how accurate the watch is and how it performs in daily use. So let's not waste any more time and dive right in. Have fun! The Apple Watch Series 10 is now available in two new sizes. Last year you could choose between 41 and 45mm cases, but this year it's 42mm and 46mm, so slightly larger. I personally have the 45mm Series 9 and now the 46mm Series 10, and does this difference really stand out? Well, not really. In any case, this has also increased the display size, now with a resolution of 416x496 pixels compared to last year's 396x484 pixels in the larger version. Interestingly, the display is even slightly bigger than the Ultra 2's display, despite the Ultra having a much larger case. So the display bezels have become narrower. In terms of brightness, the display can go up to 2000 nits again, a bit less than the 3000 nits of the Ultra 2, but you really only notice that when using the flashlight. On the other hand, the watch can dim down to just 1 nit to protect your eyes when used at night. Apple is now talking about a wide-angle OLED display, promising that the display is up to 40% brighter when viewed at an angle. This is how it looks in direct comparison with the Series 9, and when you look at them side by side, you can see from certain angles that the display of the Series 10 is slightly easier to read. But honestly, I probably wouldn't have noticed much of a difference if I wouldn't look at this side by side like here. One real-world scenario might be when you're cycling and looking at the watch's data from an angle. In this case, the Series 10 is slightly easier to read, but again, it's not something you would immediately notice. What I definitely did notice though is that the watch is now thinner. So even though the case is now a bit larger, the Series 10 in its bigger version is now 9.7mm thick compared to the Series 9, which was 10.7mm. The smaller versions are as thick as the larger ones, by the way, both last year and this year. The thinner design also impacts the weight, even if only slightly. The 45mm Series 10 in the aluminum version weighs 36.4 grams, while the Series 9 weighed 38.7 grams. However, the main change is the new titanium version. Previously you could choose between aluminum and stainless steel, but the latter option has now been replaced by titanium. Titanium is more durable than stainless steel, but most importantly it is also lighter. So now we have a significant difference in weight from previously 51.5 grams in the stainless steel version for the Series 9 to now 41.7 grams in the titanium version of the Series 10. However, I chose the aluminum versions for both the Series 9 last year and the Series 10 this year. As always, you can choose between the standard GPS version or the GPS Plus cellular model, which allows the watch to connect to the internet even without a paired smartphone. And of course, there are again many different bands to choose from. I have this green Nike Sport band, which I really like because it's very light and comfortable to wear. But yes, in terms of design, honestly not much has changed. The watch is bigger but still thinner and lighter, and the new titanium version brings a change from the usual stainless steel models. However, to be honest, all of these updates aren't really groundbreaking. There is also not much new when it comes to battery life. In fact, there is nothing new at all, as Apple provides the same battery life estimates for the Series 10 as they did last year for the Series 9, which is up to 18 hours and up to 36 hours in low power mode. I had the chance to test both watches at the same time, and here's how both battery lives play out in practice. During a roughly 30-minute run, the Series 10 consumed 6% of the battery, while the Series 9 used 9% for the same session. During a 1-hour bike ride, however, the Series 10 consumed 11%, while the Series 9 only used 10%. In the end, it always depends on many factors. How often you activate the display during the workout, whether you have smart notifications turned on and how many notifications you receive, the brightness level and much more. Overall, I found that the Series 10 has pretty much the same battery life as previous Apple Watches. In continuous workout mode, the watch can record about 8 to 10 hours of training, which means a marathon or a longer hike should be manageable, but not much more. In normal use, the watch lasts about 1.5 days for me, just like last year. One new feature is that Apple stated for the Series 9 last year that it could charge from 0 to 80% in 45 minutes, while the Series 10 this year is now set to do the same thing in 30 minutes. And again, I want to test it in practice rather than just take their word for it. After 30 minutes of charging, my Series 10 was at 85%, while the Series 9 was at 70%. After 45 minutes, the Series 10 reached 97% and the Series 9 was already at 91%. So both watches charge very quickly, but the Series 10 does indeed charge a bit faster. On this channel I typically focus on classic sports watches from Garmin, Polar, Suunto or Coros. As a passionate athlete, I'm always very interested in all of the sports, health and fitness features of smartwatches. So how does the Apple Watch Series 10 stack up in these areas? First of all, you once again have the classic fitness rings showing your daily activity data like calories burned, active time, standing time, steps, distance covered, stairs climbed and a list of your daily activities. The rings display your progress toward your daily goals and once you reach them, the rings close. Of course, you can set these goals yourself. A new feature introduced with the watchOS 11 update this summer, which by the way you can also install on older Apple Watches, is that you can pause the rings for a day, a week or even a month. This can be helpful if you are injured, allowing you to maintain your streak of achievements and keeping your awards. Also, fitness goals are now much more customizable. Previously, you could set a single goal, but now you can set individual goals for each day of the week. This is especially useful if you have certain days when it's hard to meet fitness goals, like on long work shifts, but it's easier on other days. Additionally, the app has also become more customizable with watchOS 11. You can now rearrange, adjust and delete widgets as you like. This means you can prioritize the statistics that are most important to you and hide the ones that don't interest you. For daily use, the watch offers several other measurements including heart rate, blood oxygen saturation, so the SpO2 values, body temperature and sleep tracking, which monitors sleep duration and stages. The watch can also detect sleep apnea, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops during sleep, which unfortunately often goes undiagnosed. So it's helpful to keep an eye on this with the Apple Watch. However, the watch only alerts you to abnormalities, so if you have any concern about this or any other health metrics, you should definitely always consult a doctor rather than rely solely on the watch. You can also set alerts if, for example, your heart rate is too high or too low, or if your heart rhythm is irregular. Another notable feature is the ECG measurement. You can record an electrocardiogram directly on your wrist, a feature that many sports watches lack. One interesting new feature compared to last year that was also introduced with the watchOS 11 update is the Vitals app. This app provides a quick overview of your most important health data at a glance, including heart rate, respiratory rate, skin temperature, sleep duration and blood oxygen values. Previously, separate apps were available for these metrics, but now they are all consolidated into one app. This is similar to Garmin's morning report, where you get a summary of key data when you wake up, or the health snapshot feature. In the Vitals app, you can also see if these values are within the normal range. If 2 or more metrics are outside the normal range, you can receive a notification explaining why this might be the case, such as because you are in high altitude locations, which can affect your blood oxygen levels, because you consumed alcohol, or simply because you are ill. The watch can't tell you exactly what the reason is, but it provides some factors that could be influencing these values. The normal range is automatically calculated while you sleep. For instance, you might see that your heart rate was significantly higher than usual during the night. The Vitals app is designed to provide a quick snapshot of all your most important health data and allow you to monitor whether they are within the normal range. Let's now dive into the training mode of the Apple Watch Series 10. The watch once again offers a variety of different sport modes, including, to the delight of triathletes, a multi-sport mode, and open water swimming is also included. As for swimming, the Series 10 now features a new depth sensor and water temperature sensor. Unlike the Ultra 2, the watch is not suitable for diving or high-speed water sports like water skiing, but for swimming and snorkeling it provides more information than the Series 9. Specifically for snorkeling, you can also download the Oceanic Plus app from the App Store. Additionally, you can now create interval workouts for swimming and see on the watch when the next interval begins. Of course, this also works for running and cycling, and in general there is now an up next view for all self-created interval workouts, where you can see how much is left on the current segment and what's coming up next. You can also import workouts from external apps like Training Peaks. For running, the watch can measure classics like distance or speed, but also metrics like stride length, cadence, vertical oscillation and ground contact time. It can even measure running power in watts directly from the wrist. While the data might not be as in-depth as for Garmin, Polar, Suunto or Coros, the data selection is still very good. For cycling, the watch is compatible with external sensors, particularly power meters, meaning it can also measure advanced metrics like cadence and cycling power. Moreover, you can display the watch's data fields live on a connected iPhone. So if you're cycling, you can essentially use your iPhone as a bike computer by displaying the Apple Watch's measured data, so you don't always have to glance at your wrist or take your hand off the handlebars. In recent years, I've often criticized Apple Watches for having a decent training mode itself, but lacking long-term training analysis features, so apps or widgets that help you monitor your long-term progress. Here too, the watchOS 11 update introduced a new feature to fill this gap. In the familiar activity app we've already looked at, there is now a dedicated section for your training load. After each workout you can rate how strenuous it was on a scale from 1 to 10, and this rating is included in the workout summary. For 17 sport profiles, including classics like running or cycling, an automatic rating is assigned as well, which however you can also adjust if needed. This serves as the basis for assessing your training load. For this, your training loads for the last 28 days and 7 days is calculated, and then you can see whether the training load for the last 7 days is above or below your long-term training load over the last 28 days, which allows you to see whether you're currently overtraining, undertraining, or right on track. So here in these images, the right line represents the training load for the last 28 days and the other line the training load for the last 7 days. And then you can see in 5 categories whether your acute load is significantly below, consistent, above, or significantly above your long-term training load. This is similar to what we've seen from Garmin, where it's called chronic load and acute load. Other manufacturers also calculate training load in a similar way. Often this results in a numerical value representing your training load. Most people don't really understand these specific numbers for training load, which is why Apple completely avoids it and instead uses a relative approach, so using percentages. So here you can see, are you training too much or too little, and this is a little more understandable for many people, even though I am personally a fan of these specific numbers that Garmin and Co provide. Nonetheless, I'm still very happy about this upgrade and it's very useful for athletes. However, it's worth noting that traditional sports watch manufacturers tend to offer a more detailed analysis, such as Garmin with its training readiness widget, which breaks down all the factors that affect your readiness for your next intense workout, or training status, which shows you what stimuli you're currently applying. But I definitely don't want to criticize the Apple Watch Series 10 in this regard. I was very happy and pleased to see this new feature on the watch, and I think it's very useful for many athletes out there. Nonetheless, you should definitely mention that this feature is not exclusive to the Series 10, because it was introduced with the watchOS 11 update, which can be used on watches as far back as the Series 6. An exception to this would be the aforementioned depth and water temperature sensor for swimming. Next, let's talk about GPS and navigation. Similar to the long-term training analysis, this was another area where the Apple Watches lagged behind traditional sports watches in recent years, but the watchOS 11 update came with some improvements. First of all, you can now load routes onto the watch and you can use maps offline. You can select a map area on your smartphone, download it and then load it onto your Apple Watch. You can then use the Maps app with the map available offline. Additionally, for running-based activities, you can create custom routes in the Maps app on your smartphone. This means it no longer simply calculates the fastest way from point A to point B, but for activities like hiking, for example, where you might prefer the most scenic route and not the fastest route, you can now create your own route and load it onto the watch. This is a useful addition for athletes, especially hikers and trail runners. However, this only works for running-based activities like running, hiking and similar, and unfortunately not for cycling. Plus, you can only use this feature in the Maps app, meaning there are no navigation features in the workout mode itself, which means that you can record a workout and use the Maps app, but you'll need to switch between the two apps. While this is possible and relatively quick, it's not an ideal solution from an athlete's perspective. In such cases, I usually prefer maps like Workout Doors, where navigation and workout tracking are combined in a single app. I also wanted to test the GPS accuracy of the watch. Here you should know that the Series 10 has the standard GPS, while the Ultra and Ultra 2, for example, provide dual frequency GPS, which is known to be a little more accurate. However, last year with the Series 9 that also only had standard GPS, I could achieve accurate results. So let's check the GPS accuracy of the Series 10. Running through the city, the GPS seems solid. The watch doesn't cut corners, the route doesn't go through buildings, and overall it mirrors my actual path well. Even when cycling, including cycling out of the city, the watch performed well. It stayed true to the route, accurately recorded corners, and was reliable and precise. If you followed my channel for a while, you are familiar with my forest test, where I run the same narrow forest path back and forth to challenge the GPS. The Series 10 performed very well, as you can see, with the out and back paths aligning closely. Of course, I didn't just test this once, as for all of my other tests as well, but many times, and here is another recording where the result is similarly impressive, so again, I was very happy with the watch's GPS accuracy. One area where the Apple Watch has clearly outperformed traditional sports watches from brands like Garmin in recent years, at least in my experience, and where it consistently stood out in all of my tests, is optical heart rate measurement. In fact, it had been the only watch that provided me with accurate heart rate readings in harder to track activities like strength training as well. The Series 10 uses the same sensor as the Series 9, but I still wanted to check how accurate the measurements are. Here in blue you can see the data from the Apple Watch Series 10, and in red the data from a chest strap, in this case for one of my running sessions. As we can see, both curves are almost identical, meaning the Apple Watch was, as usual, very accurate. The average heart rate differed by only 0.17 beats per minute from the chest strap, which is excellent. Here's the same comparison for cycling, and it couldn't look better. The watch detected all heart rate fluctuations perfectly, and the average heart rate differed by only 0.05 beats per minute from the chest strap, truly a perfect result. For swimming, it was the best recording I've seen so far. Because here water constantly gets between the watch and the wrist, heart rate measurement is typically very difficult in these settings, and most watches deliver very inaccurate results. However, the Apple Watch did a great job, aside from a small inaccuracy at the beginning. The average heart rate differed by less than half a beat per minute from the chest strap, which was a very pleasant surprise. The same was true for strength training. While there were occasional deviations from the chest strap here, the Apple Watch's measurements were once again so accurate that I could comfortably forego using a chest strap. Based on my experience, no other watch performs this well in this area. So whatever Apple is doing on the software side with its heart rate sensor, it is working and making this watch, according to my tests, still the most accurate on the market. Alright, so what can we conclude about the new Apple Watch Series 10? Comparing it to the Series 9 at the time that this watch was introduced last year, we now have some exciting new features for athletes for the Series 10. The Vitals and Training Load apps provide a much better insight into your fitness level, interval workouts are now available for swimming, the fitness rings and app are more customizable, and you can load routes onto the watch and use offline maps. But while all of this sounds great, it's important to mention that most of these new features are software based, which means that they can be used on older Apple Watches as far back as the Series 6. On the hardware side of things, not much has changed. Yes, the watch is a bit bigger, thinner and lighter, the display is larger and slightly easier to read, there is a new titanium version and new depth and water temperature sensors. However, for me personally, these are not compelling enough reasons to upgrade from, say, the Series 9 or even the Series 8. The Ultra 2, with its better battery life, suitability for scuba diving and siren, also still has its place, even though it's now a year older than the Series 10. If you don't have an Apple Watch yet, or perhaps have an older model like the Series 6 or older, then the Series 10 is certainly a good choice, even for athletes, provided you are okay with its battery life. So now, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the new Apple Watch Series 10. If you found this video helpful or interesting, you could really support me and my work here by giving this video a quick thumbs up. And if you don't want to miss any more reviews in the future, you should definitely consider subscribing to this channel. But for now, thanks a lot for watching and see you next time.